We're going to go to the phone now. Dave Naylor joins us. Throw in your headphones, gentlemen. CFL on TSN Insider. Dave Naylor is with us from Toronto today. For you, good afternoon, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Wasn't able to jump on the video link there.
That's fine. You sound just fine. The information is the same either way. With the news that we hear that Rick Campbell is going to be the next head coach of the BC Lions, Dave, how do you take that, and what does that mean to the Lions and the CFL coaching carousel?
I heard that this one was like extremely likely about 28 days ago, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of sense that Rick Campbell may have known where he was going when he resigned from the Ottawa Redblacks back after the regular season. I think it's a logical hire. I mean, you look at Rick had a history with Ed Hervey from Edmonton. He's won a Grey Cup. We'll wait and see if the other shoe's going to drop. That a lot of speculation is that Jason Moss might end up there as the offensive coordinator, where Rick Campbell, of course, and him worked together in 2015 when Ottawa went to the Grey Cup and lost to Edmonton. Rick LaLacheur, the president of the BC Lions, has links to the Eskimos, and I don't know if Rick Campbell knew that this was an opportunity that was going to come up the day he resigned from the Ottawa Redblacks, but I know there are a lot of people in the league that think he knew this was an opportunity that was going to come up the day he resigned from the Ottawa Redblacks. So count me as not surprised one bit on this one.
Do you see it as a fit, Dave, and is it a good move for Rick Campbell, considering where he was in Ottawa, what he's moving into? BC's a team that didn't make the playoffs this year, and they got the quarterback with the whopping contract that everybody feels has thrown their salary scale out of whack.
Well, I mean, the fit, I guess you'd have to look at, are you talking about with the general manager? I mean, Ed Hervey's hired a number of coaches now, right? He hired Chris Jones, he hired Jason Moss, and he hired Devon Claybrook. This is the first one of the four coaches that he's hired that had previous head coaching experience. So it's been more of Ed's MO to go with somebody who hadn't been a head coach before. And I think part of the reason he's gone the other direction was the criticism that was directed at the Lions this year for not having enough experience. They went with a first-time head coach and a staff full of guys that, were very, very recently removed from their playing days. So I think it's a common sense hire. I think, all those other guys I mentioned were kind of, different sorts of guys, and Ed Hervey seemed to work with all of them. In terms of, who his staff is going to be, that's going to be the more interesting thing for me, is just because of, the what went on there last year with Claybrook's hiring so many guys that were inexperienced in coaching, as I say, in a few cases, very, very recently removed from their playing days. And I think we're probably going to see a more experienced staff there. But look, again, he's a guy who's still early in his coaching career. He's 48. He's won a Grey Cup. He'd been in until this year. I mean, it had been a very successful run for him. So I think it's a common sense hire for the Lions.
You and Farhan are just knocking it out of the park, crushing it with the carousel news. I'm just wondering where Campbell to BC leaves the Eskimos and Ottawa, who are looking for head coaches, where Paul LaPolice fits in, and the Alouettes GM search. When do you expect to have an announcement on that?
Well, it's interesting because I think Paul LaPolice is going to be, I think there's a lot of interest in him in Edmonton. I would not be surprised at all if he ends up there. I think there's interest in him. There's interest in him in Ottawa. I mean, I guess if you got offered both those jobs, you would look at the two rosters and particularly the quarterback situation. That's going to be the hardest thing for somebody in Ottawa to answer the question, right? Is who's your quarterback going to be? Because if you're taking that job and free agency isn't until February, there's a bit of a leap of faith there. Because if you go to a team that doesn't have a quarterback on its roster that you can project as your starter in week number one, there's a risk there. So, by that alone, I think Edmonton is the more appealing job. So if LaPolice gets offered them both, I would expect that he would go there. I mean, Ottawa's interviewing a lot of people for this job, but interestingly, some of the guys that they're going to interview are people that are not that experienced, and a guy like Ryan Dinwiddie, right, who has coordinator experience from Montreal, I think in 2014, but he's been the quarterback coach in Calgary. But there's the sense, if they hire Ryan Dinwiddie, are they doing that to lure Nick Arbuckle? And again, a lot of times when you want to get a young quarterback who's had some opportunities and give him an opportunity to start, there's nothing better than bringing the coach with whom we had his success. And I think that's always the fear. If you take a guy out and he doesn't have the same supporting cast or the same coach, you may not get the same performance. So, I think those are all sort of considerations. I mean, interesting, the guy like Mark Killam, the assistant head coach, special teams coordinator in Calgary, is getting some attention in Ottawa. Again, it would be a guy who's never been a head coach before. In terms of Montreal and the GM search, this is interesting because, while Wally Blano was involved in this, but you look at guys like, there's the Bombers director of college scouting, Ryan McMaden. There's Rick Maiden, which is not a guy that is very well known. Danny McManus, their assistant GM, Jean-Marc Edney, the personnel director in Ottawa, Sean Burke, who's senior personnel director in Hamilton. All those guys are on that list. So again, looking at a lot of guys, rather than going back to the, maybe a Brendan Tammon who's worked in Saskatchewan, or Eric Tillman who's worked, frankly, almost everywhere. They seem to be leaning towards more trying to find the next guy than going back to guys that have done it before.
That's very interesting. Dave, that's a lot of stuff. I appreciate the time. We'll let you get back on the trail, and I appreciate you fitting us in today.
No problem, guys. We'll do it again. See ya. Bye.
Thank you.
You're watching Rod Peterson On Demand. For more of The Rod Peterson Show, visit rodpeterson.com or follow Rod Peterson on social media.